Hello everyone. I request everyone to turn on their cameras so we know that you are ready to read. Hare Krishna, Radhe Radhe. We'll give them a minute to turn on their cameras. I'm going to share my screen for the shlok and then we'll begin with the reading, okay?
As the embodied soul continuously passes in this body from boyhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another body at death. A sober person is not bewildered by such a change. Purport. Since every living entity is an individual soul, each is changing his body every moment, manifesting sometimes as a child, sometimes as a youth, and sometimes as an old man. Yet the same spirit soul is there and does not undergo any change. This individual soul finally changes the body at death and migrates to another body. And since it is sure to have another body in the next birth, e- either material or spiritual, there was no cause for lamentation by Arjuna on account of death, neither for Bhisma nor for Drona, for whom he was so much concerned. Rather, he should rejoice for their changing bodies from old to new ones, thereby rejuvenating their energy. Such changes of body account for varieties of enjoyment or suffering, according to one's work in life. So Bhisma and Drona, being noble souls, were surely going to have spiritual bodies in the next life, or at least life in heavenly bodies for superior enjoyment of material existence. So, in either case, there was no cause of lamentation. Any man who has perfect knowledge of the constitution of the individual soul, the super soul, and nature, both material and spiritual, is called a dhira, or a most sober man. Such a man is never deluded by the change of bodies. The Mayavadi theory of oneness of the spirit soul cannot be entertained on the ground that the spirit soul cannot be cut into pieces as a fragmental portion. Such cutting into different individual souls would make the supreme cleavable or changeable against the principle of the supreme souls being unchangeable. As confirmed in the Gita, the fragmental portions of the Supreme exist eternally, Sanatana, and are called
Sure.
Skasara. That is, they have a tendency to fall down into a material nature. These mental portions are eternally so, and even after liberation, the individual soul remains the same, fragmental. But once liberated, he lives an internal life in bliss and knowledge with the personality of Godhead. The theory of reflection can be applied to the super soul who is present in each and every individual body and is known as Mahatma. He is different for the individual living entity. When the sky is reflected in water, the reflections represent both the sun and the moon and the stars also. The stars can be compared to the living identities and the sun or the moon to the Supreme Lord. The individual fragmental spirit soul is represented by Arjuna, and the Supreme Soul is a personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. They are not on the same level as it will be apparent in the beginning of the fourth chapter. If Arjuna is on the same level with Krishna and Krishna is not superior to Arjuna, then their relationship of instructor and instructed becomes meaningless. If both of them are diluted by the illusory energy Maya, then there is no need of one being the instructor and the other the instructed. Such instruction would be useless because in the clutches of Maya, no one can be authoritative instructor. Under the circumstances, it is admitted that Lord Krishna is the Supreme Lord, superior in position to the living entity. Arjuna, who is a forgetful soul diluted by Maya.
शास्तु कौन्तेय शीतोष्ण सुख दुःखदा आगमन नित्य तितिक्षस्व भारत.
O son of Kunti, the non-permanent appearance of happiness and distress and their disappearance in due course are like the appearance and disappearance of winter and summer seasons. They arise from sense perception, O scion of Bharata, and one must learn to tolerate them without being disturbed. In the proper discharge of duty, one has to learn to tolerate non permanent appearances and disappearances of happiness and distress. According to Vedic injunction, one has to take his bath early in the morning, even during the month of Magh, January, February. It is very cold at that time, but in spite of that, a man who abides by the religious principles does not hesitate to take his bath. Similarly, a woman does not hesitate to cook in the kitchen in the months of May and June, the hottest part of the summer season. One has to execute his duty in spite of climatical inconveniences. Similarly, to fight is the religious principle of a Kshatriya. And although one has to fight with some friend or relative, one should not deviate from his prescribed duty. One has to follow the prescribed rules and regulations of religious principles in order to rise up to the platform of knowledge. Because by knowledge and devotion only can one liberate himself from the clutches of Maya illusion. The two different names of address given to Arjun are also significant. To address him as Kaunteya signifies his great blood relations from his mother's side, and to address him as Bharata signifies his greatness from his father's side. From both sides, he is supposed to have a great heritage. A great heritage brings responsibility in the matter of proper discharge of duties, and therefore he cannot avoid fighting.
समदुःख सुखं
O best among men, Arjuna, the person who is not disturbed by happiness and distress and is steady in both is certainly eligible for liberation. Anyone who is steady in his determination for the advanced stage of spiritual realization and can equally tolerate the onslaughts of distress and happiness is certainly a person eligible for liberation. In the Varnashrama institution, the fourth stage of life, namely the renounced order, sannyas, is a painstaking situation, but one who is serious about making his life perfect surely adopts the sannyas order of life in spite of all difficulties. The difficulties usually arise from having to sever family relationships to give up the connection of wife and children. But if anyone is able to tolerate such difficulties, surely his path to spiritual realization is complete. Similarly, in Arjuna's discharge of duties as a Kshatriya, he is advised to persevere. Even if it is difficult to fight with his family members or similarly beloved persons. Lord Chaitanya took sannyas at the age of 24, and his dependents, young wife as well as old mother, had no one else to look after them. Yet, for a higher cause, he took sannyas and was steady in the discharge of higher duties. That is the way of achieving liberation from material bondage.
उभयोरपि दृष्टो त्वनयोर्वदतिभिः
Those who are seers of the truth have concluded that of the non existent, the material body, there is no endurance, and of the eternal, the soul, there is no change. This they have concluded by studying the nature of both. Purport: there is no endurance of the changing body, that the body is changing every moment by the actions and reactions of the different cells, as admitted by modern medical science, and thus growth and old age are taking place in the body. But the spirit soul exists permanently, remaining the same despite all changes of the body and the mind. That is the difference between matter and spirit. By nature, the body is ever changing and the soul is eternal. This conclusion is established by all classes of seers of the truth, both impersonalist and personalist. In the Vishnu Purana, it is stated that Vishnu and his abodes all have self illuminated spiritual existence. Jyotimsi Vishnur Bhuvanani Vishnu. The words existent and non existent refer only to spirit and matter. That is the version of all seers of truth. This is the beginning of the instruction by the Lord to the living entities who are bewildered by the influence of ignorance. Removal of ignorance involves the re establishment of the eternal relationship between the worshipper and the worshipable, and the consequent understanding of the difference between the part and parcel living entities and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One can understand the nature of the Supreme by thorough study of oneself, the difference between oneself and the Supreme Being, understood as the relationship between the part and the whole. In the Vedanta Sutras as well as in the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Supreme has been accepted as the origin of all emanations. Such emanations are experienced by superior and inferior natural consequences. The living entities belong to the superior nature, as it will be revealed in the seventh chapter. Although, although there is no difference between the energy and the energetic is accepted as the supreme, and the energy of nature is accepted as the subordinate. The living entities, therefore, are always subordinate to the Supreme Lord, as in the case of the master and the servant, or the teacher and the taught. Such clear knowledge is impossible to understand under the spell of ignorance, and to drive away such ignorance, the Lord teaches the Bhagavad Gita for the enlightenment of all living entities for all time.
विनाशितु तद्विद्धि येन सर्वमिदं ततं विनाशमव्ययस्य चित्तर्तुमर्हति
That which pervades the entire body, you should know to be indestructible. No one is able to destroy that imperishable soul. This verse more clearly explains the real nature of the soul, which is spread all over the body. Anyone can understand what is spread all over the body. It is consciousness. Everyone is conscious of the pains and the pleasures of the body in part or as a whole. This spreading of consciousness is limited within one's own body. The pains and pleasures of one body are unknown to another. Therefore, each and every body is the embodiment of an individual soul, and the symptom of the soul's presence is perceived as individual consciousness. This soul is described as 1/10,000th part of the upper portion of the hair point in size. The Shweta Swara Upanishad 5.9 confirms this. Balagra Sata Bhagasya Satadha Kalpitasya Bhago Jiha Sa Vijnaye Sa Kanantayay Kalpate. When the upper point of a hair is divided into 100 parts, and again each of such parts is further divided into 100 parts, each such part is the measurement of the dimension of the spirit soul. Similarly, the same version is stated. There are innumerable particles of spiritual atoms which are measured as 1/10,000 of the upper portion of the hair. Therefore, the individual particle of spirit soul is a spiritual atoms smaller than the material atoms, and such atoms are innumerable. This is very small spiritual spark. This very small spiritual spark is the basic principle of the material body, and the influence of such a spiritual spark is spread all over the body as the influence of the active principle of some medicine spreads throughout the body. This current of the spirit soul is felt all over the body as consciousness, and that is the proof of the presence of the soul. Any layman can understand that the material body minus consciousness is a dead body, and this consciousness cannot be revived in the body by any means of material administration. Therefore, consciousness is not due to any amount of material combination, but to the spirit soul. In the Mukunda Upanishad 3.1.9, the measurement of the atomic spirit soul is further explained. The soul is atomic in size and can be perceived by perfect intelligence. This atomic soul is floating in the five kinds of air: prana, apana, vyana, samana, and udhana. Is situated within the heart and spread its influence all over the body of the embodied living entities. When the soul is purified from the contamination of the five kinds of material air, its spiritual influence is exhibited. The Hatha Yoga system is meant for controlling the five kinds of air and encircling the pure soul by different kinds of sitting postures, not for any material profit, but for liberation of the minute soul from the entanglement of the material atmosphere. So, the constitution of the atomic soul is admitted in all Vedic literatures, and it is also actually felt in the practical experience of any sane man. Only the insane man can think of this atomic soul as all pervading Vishnu Tattva. The influence of the atomic soul can be spread all over a particular body. According to the Mukunda Upanishad, this atomic soul is situated in the heart of every living entity, and because the measurement of the atomic soul is beyond the power of appreciation of the material scientist, some of them assert foolishly that there is no soul. The individual atomic soul is definitely there in the heart along with the super soul, and thus all the energies of the bodily movements are emanating from this part of the body. The corpuscle which carry the oxygen from the lungs gather energy from the soul. When the soul passes away from this position, the activity of the blood generating fusion ceases. Medical science accepts the importance of red corpuscles, but it cannot ascertain that the source of the energy is the soul. Medical science, however, does admit that the heart is the seat of all energies of the body. Such atomic particles of the spirit whole are compared to the sunshine molecules. In the sunshine, there are innumerable radiant molecules. Similarly, the fragmental parts of the Supreme Lord are atomic sparks of the rays of the Supreme Lord, called the name Prabha or superior energy. So, whether one follows Vedic knowledge or modern science, one cannot deny the existence of spirit soul in the body. And the science of the soul is explicitly described in the Bhagavad Gita by the personality of Godhead himself.
शरीरिणः अनाशिनो प्रमेयस्य नाभ्युद्भवः
The material body of the indestructible, immeasurable, and eternal living entity is sure to come to an end. Therefore, fight, O descendant of Bharata. Purport: the material body is perishable by nature. It may perish immediately or it may do so after 100 years. It is a question of time only. Therefore, there is no chance of maintaining it indefinitely. But the spirit soul is so minute that it cannot even be seen by any enemy, to say nothing of being killed. As mentioned in the previous verse, it is so small that no one can have any idea how to measure its dimension. So, both from viewpoints, there is no cause of lamentation, because the living entity as he is cannot be killed, nor can the material body be saved for any length of time or permanently protected. The minute particle of the whole spirit acquires this material body according to his work, and therefore observance of religious principles should be utilized. In the Vedanta Sutras, the living entity is qualified as light because he is part and parcel of the supreme light. As sunlight maintains the entire universe, so the light of the soul maintains this material body. As soon as the spirit soul is out of this material body, the body begins to decompose. Therefore, it is the spirit soul which maintains this body. The body itself is unimportant. Arjuna was advised to fight and not sacrifice the cause of religion for material bodily considerations.
य एनं वेत्ति हन्ता यश्चैनं मन्यते हतम् उभौ तौ न विजातो
Neither he who thinks the living entity the slayer, nor he who thinks slain is in knowledge. For the self slays, nor not nor is slain. Purport by Divine Grace Prabhupada. When an embodied living entity is hurt by fatal weapons, it is to be known that the living entity within the body is not killed. The spirit soul is so small that it is impossible to kill him by any material weapon, as will be evident from the subsequent verses. Nor is the living entity killable because of his spiritual constitution. What is killed, or what is supposed to be killed, is the body only. This, however, does not at all encourage killing of the body. The Vedic injunction is Mahimsayat Sarvabhutani. Never commit violence to anyone. Nor does understanding that the living entity is not killed encourage animal slaughter. Killing the body of anyone without authority is menable. It is punishable by law of the state as well as by the law of the Lord. Arjuna, however, is being engaged in killing for the principle of religion and not whimsically.
न जायते म्रियते न भूत्वा भवितुः न भूयः चोरि शाश्वतोऽयं पुराणो न हन्यते
For the soul, there is neither birth nor death at any time. He has not come into being, does not come into being, and will not come into being. He is unborn, eternal, ever existing, and primeval. He is not slain when the body is slain. Purport. Qualitatively, the small atomic fragmental part of the Supreme Spirit is one with the Supreme. He undergoes no changes like the body. Sometimes the soul is called the steady or kutastha. The body is subject to 6 kinds of transformations. It takes its birth from the womb of the mother's body, remains for some time, grows, produces some effects, gradually dwindles, and at last vanishes into oblivion. The soul, however, does not go through such changes. The soul is not born, but because he takes on a material body, the body takes its birth. The soul does not take birth there, and the soul does not die. Anything which has birth also has death, and because the soul has no birth, he therefore has no past, present, or future. He is eternal, ever existing, or primeval. That is, there is no trace in history of his coming into being. Under the impression of the body, we seek the history of birth, etc., of the soul. The soul does not at any time become old, as the body does. The so called old man therefore feels himself to be in the same spirit in his childhood or youth. The changes of the body do not affect the soul. The soul does not deteriorate like a tree, nor anything material. The soul has no byproduct either. The byproducts of the body, namely children, are also different individual souls, and owing to the body they appear as children of a particular man. The body develops because of the soul's presence, but the soul has neither offshoots nor change. Therefore, the soul is free from the six changes of the body. In the Katha Upanishads, we also find a similar passage. The meaning and purport of this verse is the same as in Bhagavad Gita. But here in this verse there is one special word, Vipasit, which means learned or with knowledge. The soul is full of knowledge, or full always with consciousness. Therefore, consciousness is the symptom of the soul. Even if one does not find the soul within the heart where he is situated, one can still understand the presence of the soul simply by the presence of consciousness. Sometimes we do not find the sun in the sky owing to clouds or for some other reason, but the light of the sun is always there, and we are convinced that it is there for daytime. As soon as there is light in the sky early in the morning, we can understand that the sun is in the sky. Similarly, since there is some consciousness in all bodies, whether man or animal, we can understand the presence of the soul. This consciousness of the soul is, however, different from the consciousness of the Supreme, because the Supreme Consciousness is all knowledge, past, present, and future. The consciousness of the individual soul is prone to be forgetful. When he is forgetful of his real nature, he obtains education and enlightenment from the superior lessons of Krishna. But Krishna is not like the forgetful soul. If so, Krishna's teachings of Bhagavad Gita would be useless. There are two kinds of souls, namely the minute particle soul, Anu Atma, and the super soul, Vibhu Atma. This is also confirmed in the Katha Upanishads. Both the super soul and the Paramatma and the atomic soul, Jivatma, are situated on the same tree of the body, within the same heart of the living being, and only one who has become free from all material desires as well as lamentations can, by the grace of the Supreme, understand the glories of the soul. Krishna is the fountainhead of the super soul. Also, it will be disclosed in the following chapters, and Arjuna is the atomic soul, forgetful of his real nature. Therefore, he requires to be enlightened by Krishna or by his bona fide representative, the spiritual master.
वेदाविनाशिनं नित्यं येनमजमव्ययम् कथं स पुरुषः
O Partha, how can a person who knows that the soul is indestructible, eternal, unborn, and immutable kill anyone or cause anyone to kill? Purport. Everything has its proper utility, and a man who is situated in complete knowledge knows how and where to apply a thing for its proper utility. Similarly, violence also has its utility, and how to apply violence rests with the person in knowledge.
Although the justice of the peace awards capital punishment to a person condemned for murder, the
गैस बंद
justice
कर
of
दो
peace cannot be
गैस
blamed
बंद हो गया होगा
because he orders violence to another person according to the codes of justice. In Manusmriti, the law book of mankind, it is supported that a murderer should be condemned to death so that in his next life he will not have to suffer for the great sin he has committed. Therefore, the king's punishment of hanging a murderer is actually beneficial. Similarly, when Krishna orders fighting, it must be concluded that violence is for supreme justice, and thus Arjuna should follow the instruction, knowing well that such violence committed in the act of fighting for Krishna is not violence at all, because at any rate, the man or rather the soul cannot be killed. So, for the administration of justice, so called violence is permitted. A surgical operation is not meant to kill the patient but to cure him. Therefore, the fighting to be executed by Arjuna at the instruction of Krishna is with full knowledge. So, there is no possibility of sinful reaction. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just want to just draw some light on this. A surgical operation is not meant to kill the patient but to cure him. Gita is so relevant in today's time also, and this so beautifully explains surgical strikes happened on the country that we know by our country, and why no we understand now, because the surgical operation is not meant to kill but to cure. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
This shlok is extremely important because here dying is compared to changing new clothes, getting new bodies.
वासांसि जीर्णम्
As a person puts on new garments, giving up old ones, the soul similarly accepts new material bodies, giving up the old and useless ones. Purport. Change of body by the atomic individual soul is an accepted fact. Even the modern scientists who do not believe in the existence of the soul, but at the same time cannot explain the source of energy from the heart, have to accept continuous changes of body which appear from childhood to boyhood and from boyhood to youth and again from youth to old age. From old age, the change is transferred to another body. This has already been explained in a previous verse, 2.13. Transference of the atomic individual soul to another body is made possible by the grace of the supersoul. The supersoul fulfills the desire of the atomic soul as one friend fulfills the desire of another. The Vedas, like the Mundaka Upanishad as well as the Svetasvatara Upanishad, compare the soul and the supersoul to two friendly birds sitting on the same tree. One of the birds, the individual atomic soul, is eating the fruit of the tree, and the other bird, Krishna, is simply watching his friend. Of these two birds, although they are the same in quality, one is captivated by the fruits of the material tree, while the other is simply witnessing the activities of his friend. Krishna is the witnessing bird, and Arjuna is the eating bird. Although they are friends, one is still the master and the other is the servant. Forgetfulness of this relationship by the atomic soul is the cause of one's changing his position from one tree to another or from one body to another. The Jiva soul is struggling very hard on the tree of the material body, But as soon as he agrees to accept the other god as the supreme spiritual master, as Arjuna agreed to do by voluntary surrender unto Krishna for instruction, the subordinate god immediately becomes free from all limitations. Both the Mundaka Upanishad 3.1.2 and Shvetasvatara Upanishad 4.7 confirm this. Although the two birds are in the same tree, the eating bird is fully engrossed with anxiety and moroseness as the enjoyer of the fruits of the tree. But if in some way or other he turns his face to his friend the Lord and knows his glories, at once the suffering bird becomes free from all anxieties. Arjuna has now turned his face towards his eternal friend Krishna and is understanding the Bhagavad Gita from him. And thus, hearing from Krishna, he can understand the supreme glories of the Lord and be free from lamentation. Arjuna is advised herewith by the Lord not to lament for the bodily change of his old grandfather and his future. He should rather be happy to kill their bodies in the righteous fight so that they may be cleansed at once of all reactions from various bodily activities. One who lays down his life on the sacrificial altar or in the proper battlefield is at once cleansed of bodily reactions and promoted to a higher status of life. So there was no cause for Arjuna's lamentation.
नैनं छिन्दन्ति शस्त्राणि नैनं दहति न चैनं क्लेशोक्षयति।
The soul can never be cut to pieces by any weapon, nor burned by fire, nor moistened by water, not withered by the wind. Purport: all kind of weapons, swords, flame weapons, rain weapons, tornado weapons, etc., are unable to kill the spirit soul. It appears that there were many kind of weapons made of earth, water, air, ether, etc., in addition to the modern weapons of fire. Even the nuclear weapons of the modern age are classified as fire weapons. But formerly there were other weapons made of all different types of material elements. Fire weapons were counteracted by water weapons, which are now unknown to modern science. Nor do modern scientists have knowledge of tornado weapons. Nonetheless, the soul can never be cut into pieces, nor annihilated by any number of weapons, regardless of scientific devices. The Mayavadi cannot explain how the individual soul came into the existence simply by ignorance and consequently became covered by the illusory energy. Nor was it ever possible to cut the individual souls from the original Supreme Soul. Rather, the individual souls are eternally separated parts of the Supreme Soul. Because they are atomic, individual soul eternally, Sanatana, they are prone to be covered by the illusory energy, and thus they become separated from the association of the Supreme Lord. Just as the sparks of a fire, although one in quality with the fire, are prone to be extinguished when out of fire. In the Varaha Purana, the living entities are described as separated parts and parcels of the Supreme. They are eternally so according to the Bhagavad Gita also. So even after being liberated from illusion, the living identity remains a separate identity, and as is evident from the teachings of the Lord to Arjuna. Arjuna became liberated by the knowledge received from Krishna, but he never became one with Krishna.
यज्ञोऽयमदाह्योऽयम् अक्लेद्यो शोष्य एव च नित्यः सर्वगतस्थाणुः अचलोऽयं सनातनः.
This individual soul is unbreakable and insoluble, and can be neither burned nor dried. He is everlasting, present everywhere, unchangeable, immovable, and eternally the same. All these qualifications of the atomic soul definitely prove that the individual soul is eternally the atomic particle of the spirit whole, and he remains the same atom eternally without change. The theory of monism is very difficult to apply in this case because the individual soul is never expected to become homogeneously. After liberation from material contamination, the atomic soul may prefer to remain as a spiritual spark in the effulgent rays of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But the intelligent souls enter into the spiritual planets to associate with the Personality of Godhead. The word Sarvagata, all pervading, is significant because there is no doubt that living entities are all over God's creation. They live on the land, in the water, in the air, within the earth, and even within fire. The belief that they are sterilized in fire is not acceptable because clearly uh, because it is clearly stated here that the soul cannot be burned by fire. Therefore, there is no doubt that there are living entities also in the sun planet with suitable bodies to live there. If the sun globe is uninhabited, then the word Sarvagata, living everywhere, becomes meaningless.
This is very surprising. So it is saying that there are living entities in the sun also.
Right. Just like fish has a suitable body for the water, we can't live in water, but
Yeah.
fish can. तो वैसे ही सन में उनके हिसाब के बॉडीज बने हुए हैं.
Wow. And it says सर्वगता living everywhere. मतलब हर planet में कोई ना कोई entities है.
So,
पूरे यूनिवर्स में है.
right.
Wow.
अव्यक्तोऽयमचिन्त्योऽयम् अविकार्योऽयमुच्यते तस्मादेवं विदित्वा शोचितुमर्हसि.
It is said that the soul is invisible, inconceivable, and immutable. Knowing this, you should not grieve for the body. As described previously, the magnitude of the soul is so small that for our material calculation, that he cannot be seen even by the most powerful microscope. Therefore, he is invisible. As far as the soul's existence is concerned, no one can establish his existence experimentally beyond the proof of Shruti or Vedic wisdom. We have to accept this truth because there is no other source of understanding the existence of the soul, although it is a fact by perception. There are many things we have to accept solely on grounds of superior authority. No one can deny the existence of his father based upon the authority of his mother. There is no source of understanding the identity of the father except by the authority of the mother. Similarly, there is no source of understanding the soul except by studying the Vedas. In other words, the soul is inconceivable by human experimental knowledge. The soul is consciousness and conscious. That also is the statement of the Vedas, and we have to accept it. Unlike the bodily changes, there is no change in the soul, as eternally unchangeable. The soul remains atomic in comparison to the infinite supreme soul. The supreme soul is infinite, and the atomic soul is infinitesimal. Therefore, the infinitesimal soul, being unchangeable, can never become equal to the infinite soul or the supreme personality of Godhead. This concept is repeated in the Vedas in different ways just to confirm the stability of the conception of the soul. The repetition of something is necessary in order that we understand the matter thoroughly without error.
चैनन्नित्यजातं नित्यं वा मन्यसे मृतं तथापि त्वं महाबाहो न त्वं शोचितुमर्हसि.
Bhagavad Gita is giving answers to all. This श्लोक is going to tell us about कि ठीक है, अगर आप सोल में नहीं भी मानते तो भी कोई जरूरत नहीं है अर्जुन आपको लैमेंट करने की.
If, however, you think that the soul of or the symptoms of life will always be born and die forever, you still have no reason to lament, O mighty armed. Purport by Divine Grace Prabhupada. There is always a class of philosophers, almost akin to the Buddhist, who do not believe in the separate existence of the soul beyond the body. When Lord Krishna spoke the Bhagavad Gita, it appears that such philosophers existed, and they were known as the Lokayakas and Vaibhasikas. Such philosophers maintain that life symptoms take place at a certain mature condition of material combination. The modern material scientists and materialistic philosophers also think similarly. According to them, the body is combination of physical elements, and at a certain stage of life, symptoms develop by interaction of the physical and chemical elements. The science of the anthropology is based on this philosophy. Currently, many pseudo religions now becoming fashionable in America are also adhering to the philosophy, as are the nihilistic, non-devotional Buddhist sects. Even if Arjuna did not believe in the existence of the soul as it is in the Vaibhashika philosophy, there should be still have been no cause for lamentation. No one laments the loss of certain bulk of chemicals and stops discharging his prescribed duty. On the other hand, in modern science and scientific warfare, so many tons of chemicals are wasted for achieving victory over the enemy. According to the Vaibhashika philosophy, the so-called soul or Atma vanishes along with the deteriorate, deterioration of the body. So, in any case, whether Arjuna accepted the Vedic conclusion that there is an atomic soul or he did not believe in the existence of the soul, he had no reason to lament. According to this theory, since there are so many living entities generating out of matter every moment, and so many of them are being vanquished every moment, there is no need to grieve for such incidents. If there were no rebirth for the soul, Arjuna had no reason to be afraid of being affected by sinful reactions due to his killing of his grandfather and teacher. But at the same time, Krishna sarcastically addressed Arjuna as Mahabahu, mighty armed, because he at least did not accept the theory of the Vaibhashikas, which leaves aside the Vedic wisdom. As a Kshatriya, Arjuna belonged to the Vedic culture, and it behooved him to continue to follow its principles.
अतस्य हि ध्रुवो मृत्युर्ध्रुवश्च अमृतस्य च तस्मात् पर्याप्ते न त्वं शोचितुमर्हसि.
This is also such a beautiful way of Krishna convincing Arjun to fight, because he's saying कि जो born हुए हैं वो मरने तो वाले ही हैं, तो तुम्हारे ग्रैंडफादर, तुम्हारे टीचर तो वैसे भी मरेंगे, तो तुम अपना ड्यूटी में मत चूको, अपनी ड्यूटी करो.
One who has taken his birth is sure to die, and after death one is sure to take birth again. Therefore, in the unavoidable discharge of your duty, you should not lament. One has to take birth according to one's activities of life, and after finishing one term of activities, one has to die to take birth for the next. In this way, one is going through one cycle of birth and death after another without liberation. This cycle of birth and death does not, however, support unnecessary murder, slaughter, and war. But at the same time, violence and war are inevitable factors in human society for keeping law and order. The Battle of Kurukshetra, being the will of the Supreme, was an inevitable event, and to fight for the right cause is the duty of a Kshatriya. Why should he be afraid of or aggrieved at the death of his relative since he was discharging his proper duty? He did not deserve to break the law, thereby becoming subjected to the reactions of sinful acts of which he was so afraid. By avoiding the discharge of his proper duty, he would not be able to stop the death of his relatives, and he would be degraded due to his selection of the wrong path of action.
The next श्लोक is also very interesting because it's saying कि start में तो थे ही नहीं हम सब, सिर्फ हम बीच में होते हैं, फिर हम एंड में भी रहते नहीं हैं. जैसे अगर अपन एक बिल्डिंग देखेंगे तो पहले तो बनी ही नहीं थी, अनकंस्ट्रक्टेड थी, फिर वो सडनली आपके सामने खड़ी है एंड आफ्टर लाइक फॉर से 25-30 ईयर्स अगेन उसको डिसमेंटल कर देंगे. तो ऐसी चीज के लिए क्यों इतना रोना है आपको, जो सिर्फ बीच में है, स्टार्ट में भी नहीं है, एंड में भी नहीं है. टॉकिंग अबाउट द बॉडी.
अव्यक्तादीनि भूतानि व्यक्तमध्यानि भारत अव्यक्तनिधनान्येव तत्र का परिदेवना.
All created beings are unmanifest in their beginning, manifest in their interim state, and unmanifested again when inhalated. So, what need is there for lamentation? Purport. Accepting that there are two classes of philosophers, one believing in the existence of the soul, and the other not believing in the existence of the soul. There is no cause for lamentation in either case. Non-believers in the existence of the soul are called atheists by followers of the Vedic wisdom. Now, yet, even if, for argument's sake, we accept this atheistic theory that there is no cause for lamentation, apart from the separate existence of the soul, the material elements remain unmanifested before creation. From this subtle state of non-manifestation comes manifestation. Just as from either air is generated, from air fire is generated, and from fire water is generated, and from water earth becomes manifested. From the earth, many varieties of manifestations take place. Take, for example, a big skyscraper manifested from the earth. When it is dismantled, the manifestation becomes again unmanifested and remains as atoms in the ultimate stage. The law of conservation of energy remains, but in course of time, things are manifested and unmanifested. That is the difference. Then what cause is there for lamentation? Either in the stage of manifestation or unmanifestation. Somehow or the other, even in the unmanifested stage, things are not lost, both at the beginning and at the end. All elements remain unmanifested, and only in the middle are they manifested, and this does not make any real material difference. And if we accept the Vedic conclusion as stated in the Bhagavad Gita that these material bodies are perishable in due course of time, but that the soul is eternal, that we must remember always that the body is like a dress. Therefore, why lament for a changing dress? The material body has no factual existence in relation to the eternal soul. It is something like a dream. In a dream, we may think of flying in the sky or sitting on a chariot as a king. But when we wake up, we can see that we are neither in the sky nor seated on the chariot. The Vedic wisdom encourages self-realization on the basis of non-existence of the material body. Therefore, in either case, Whether one believes in the existence of the soul or one does not believe in the existence of the soul, there is no cause for lamentation for loss of the body.
आश्चर्यवत् पश्यति कश्चिदेनम् आश्चर्यवद् वदति तथैव चान्यः आश्चर्यवच्चैनमन्यः शृणोति श्रुत्वाप्येनं वेद न चैव कश्चित्.
So in this shlok, how many times the word Ashcharya has come? Somebody is keeping count. Check. 3 times.
Some look on the soul as amazing, some describe him as amazing, and some hear of him as amazing, while others, even after hearing about him, cannot understand him at all. The purport. Since Gita Upanishad is largely based on the principles of the Upanishads, it is not surprising to also find this passage in the Katha Upanishad. Shravanayapi bahubir yona labhya shrinvantopi bhavo yamna vidyuh. Ascharyo vakta kushalo sya labdha askaryo syanadnata kushalanushishta. The fact that the atomic soul is within the body of a gigantic animal and the body of a gigantic banyan tree, and also in the microbic germs, millions and billions of which occupy only an inch of space, is certainly very amazing. Men with a poor fund of knowledge and men who are not austere cannot understand the wonders of the individual atomic spark of spirit, even though it is explained by the greatest authority of knowledge, who imparted lessons even to Brahma, the first living being in the universe. Owing to a gross material conception of things, most men in this age cannot imagine how such a small particle can become both so great and so small. So men look at the soul proper as wonderful, either by constitution or by description. Illusion by the material energy. People are so engrossed in subject matters for sense gratification that they have very little time to understand the question of self-understanding, even though it is a fact that without this self-understanding, all activities result in ultimate defeat in the struggle for existence. Perhaps they have no idea that one must think of the soul and thus make a solution to the material mysteries. Some people who are inclined to hear about the soul may be attending lectures in good association, but sometimes, owing to ignorance, they are misguided by acceptance of the supersoul and the atomic soul as one, without distinction of magnitude. It is very difficult to find a man who perfectly understands the position of the supersoul, the atomic soul, their respective functions and relationships, and all other major and minor details. And it is still more difficult to find a man who has actually derived full benefit from knowledge of the soul and who is also able to describe the position of the soul in different aspects. But if somehow or other one is able to understand the subject matter of the soul, then one's life is successful. The easiest process for understanding the subject matter of self, however, is to accept the statements of the Bhagavad Gita spoken by the greatest authority, Lord Krishna, without being deviated by other theories. But it also requires a great deal of penance and sacrifice, either in this life or in the previous ones, before one is able to accept Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Krishna can, however, be known as such by the causeless mercy of the pure devotee and by no other way.
It was so beautifully said that soul is there in a big giant banyan tree and also in a small micro germ or organism. Like it's actually so amazing to think about it. कि सब में है.
Yeah, absolutely.
हि नित्यमवध्योऽयं देहे सर्वस्य सर्वाणि शोचितुमर्हसि.
O descendant of Bharata, he who dwells in the body can never be slain. Therefore, you need not grieve for any living being. The Lord now concludes the chapter of instruction on the immutable spirit soul. In describing the immortal soul in various ways, Lord Krishna establishes that the soul is immortal and the body is temporary. Therefore, Arjuna, as a Kshatriya, should not abandon his duty out of fear that his grandfather and teacher Bhishma and Drona will die in the battle. On the authority of Sri Krishna, one has to believe that there is a soul different from the material body, not that there is no such thing as soul, or that living symptoms develop at a certain stage of material maturity resulting from the interaction of chemicals. Though the soul is immortal, violence is not encouraged, but at the time of war, it is not discouraged when there is actual need for it. That need must be justified in terms of the sanction of the Lord and not capriciously.
स्वधर्ममपि चावेक्ष्य न विकम्पितुमर्हसि धर्म्याधियुद्धात् श्रेयोऽन्यत् क्षत्रियस्य न विद्यते.
So basically, this with the previous shlok, the soul section is over, and now we're coming to my favorite section actually. क्योंकि here Krishna is saying to Arjun is actually very good कि ऐसी धर्म युद्ध करने का अवसर कितने कम लोगों को मिलता है, तो लड़ो.
Considering your specific duty as a Kshatriya, you should know that there is no better engagement for you than fighting on religious principles, and so there is no need for hesitation. Purport. Out of the four orders of social administration, the second order for the matter of good administration is called Kshatriya. Kasat means hurt. One who gives protection from harm is called Kshatriya. Triyate, to give protection. The Kshatriyas are trained for killing in the forest. A Kshatriya would go into the forest and challenge a tiger face and fight with the tiger with his sword. When the tiger was killed, it would be offered the royal order of cremation. This system has been followed even up to the present day by the Kshatriya kings of Jaipur state. The Kshatriyas are specially trained for challenging and killing because religious violence is sometimes a necessary factor. Therefore, Kshatriyas are never meant for accepting directly the order of sannyasa or renunciation. Non-violence in politics may be a diplomacy, but it is never a factor or principle. In the religious law books, it is stated, in the battlefield, a king or Kshatriya, while fighting another king envious of him, is eligible for achieving the heavenly planets after death, as the Brahmanas also attain the heavenly planets by sacrificing animals in the sacrificial fire. Therefore, killing on the battlefield on religious principles and killing animals in the sacrificial fire are not at all considered to be acts of violence because everyone is benefited by the religious principles involved. The animal sacrifice gets a human life immediately without undergoing the gradual evolutionary process from one form to another, and the Kshatriyas killed on the battlefield also attain the heavenly planets, as do the Brahmanas who attain them by offering sacrifice. There are two kinds of swadharmas, specific duties. As long as one is not liberated, one has to perform the duties of his particular body in accordance with religious principles in order to achieve liberation. When one is liberated, one's swadharma, specific duty, becomes spiritual and is not in the material bodily concept. In the bodily conception of life, there are specific duties for the Brahmanas and Kshatriyas respectively, and such duties are unavoidable. Swadharma is ordained by the Lord, and this will be clarified in the fourth chapter. On the bodily plane, Swadharmas is called Varnasrama Dharma or man's stepping stone for spiritual understanding. Human civilization begins from the stage of Varnasarma's dharma or specific duties in terms of the specific modes of nature of the body obtained. Discharging one's specific duty in any field of action in accordance with the orders of higher authorities serves to elevate one to a higher status of life.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. And good night. Hare Krishna, Radhe Radhe.
Radhe
Right.
Radhe. Good night.
Radhe Radhe.
Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.
See you all tomorrow at 12.
Yes.
And also, it would be very nice if we could all post on our Insta handles the day 1, day 2, because it's so motivating for more people to join us.
Right.
Because then after Gita, we could take up other books also.
Definitely. We'll put it on the group. Thank you.